episode for the week. And Tubby, man, welcome back to the show.
What's up? I'm ready to talk some football.
Right there with you. And today, I think this week we got a release date for the new college football video game. And
Mhm.
last year it was super hype, very excited to have it. And not all the features were there, but to be expected. So I'm curious, Tubby, what is the number one feature, or maybe top two features that you hope is in the game this year, assuming you would buy it?
So the one I'm hoping for, which I don't think it's going to happen, I know that it's a big hurdle because of the new NIL and all that stuff, but I want there to be a way for me to export my draft classes to Madden. Me and my dad love doing franchise mode on Madden. I want there to be a way to where I can export it. I know you can't put the names and stuff like because of the NIL and NFLPA stuff, but make a way where when I export it, it just scrambles the names, keeps the colleges there, but just scrambles the names, so it's not the same name, maybe not the same image and likeness and stuff like that, but
Hmm.
find a way to let me export my draft classes.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people want that. I think it's just so challenging with like
Hmm.
you said, the NIL and then the NFL contract stuff. So, the number one thing I would want, and I wanted this last year, was to take a small school and I wanted to customize the stadium and make it get bigger as I build a program. It's
Yeah.
frustrating to have a
Hmm.
small program that can't do it. I think that, and then being able to do the Road to Glory mode and start in high school. I think a lot of people want that, or choose
Yeah.
different positions or attributes. Like it was very limited what it was
Hmm.
last year. So very small
Yeah.
little details, but who knows? Also, being able to a lot of people want FCS schools, which I don't really think is a huge deal, but some people really want to do that and like build a
Yeah.
program up from that as they move up. So
Yeah, I like that one. Take an SCS school like, North Dakota State, win a couple national championships and be like, boom, I'm come to the FBS. And then
yeah.
start taking over. But I like yours, because when you start building up those small programs, you get to a point where those big recruits, oh, they want the facilities. Well, you can't improve it, so your facility rank is always going to be down at the bottom. So make a
Hmm.
way to where I can improve that, so it helps
Hmm.
me with recruiting towards, getting some of those better players to keep my team,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
afloat,
I'm right there. Madden has it, so why not let me do it?
right?
Well, they don't
That's
have
what I'm
it. Like,
saying.
I would want to be able to like literally
Yeah,
add 20,000 seeds if I wanted to, that kind of
yeah,
thing. So
I agree. I think that, yeah, needs to do something.
yeah, so I don't know. It'll come out this year. Honestly, I'm worried that this is going to be a repeat of some of the other video games like Madden or the show that typically are copy
Yeah.
and paste, updated rosters, that kind of thing. Not a huge deal, especially if you do dynasty modes where I think they
Hmm.
really want to cater to the what is it, the ultimate team or whatever it is. That's just not
Seen that
we
stuff.
didn't grow up playing the games that way, so we don't really play the game that way now.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I played it once.
0 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all right, well, let's move on to actual NFL news and notes. So we're in the offseason. This week's schedule came out and was released. Any big key thoughts that you had on this? I mean, it's just a schedule. It's not a huge deal, but people get excited.
I mean, the NFC North, you've got a long road ahead. I think all four teams were in the top 10, top 8 of the toughest schedules. I mean, that's what happens when you have really good teams in one
A deep
division.
division, yeah.
Yeah, you always get the tougher schedules based off of rank records,
Hmm.
and so you get those teams that don't have those divisions that don't have great records. They're going to get easier schedules. So it definitely, if you're the NFC North, you're not liking the way the schedule came out, like strength wise, but Packers fans, we get the Lions week 1. I
Right,
mean,
right off the bat. Let's go.
yeah,
Yeah, the Chiefs get the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. I mean, they want to break the televisions. That's what the NFL wants to do. We want every TV to explode because that many people will be watching. That's what they're
yeah,
hoping for.
yeah. I mean, the Packers, they play the Lions on Thanksgiving also.
As
So
it
I
should
mean,
be.
yeah, I think that's one of those ones that it should just be Packers Lions Thanksgiving. Maybe we get another incredible ending like we had with the Hail Mary to Richard Rodgers and upset. The Packers weren't playing great at that time, and the Lions were kind of on a little heater, and then boom, Aaron Rodgers, and that just kind of propelled the Packers into the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah, Chiefs playing again on Christmas Day. I think it's Christmas Day. or evening, I guess, in the
Yeah.
night game. But NFL really is all over the place. It has a ton of games, lots of primetime games. I don't know that there's anybody who I really felt got slighted as far as primetime games go or the better slots. Chiefs this year have four, I believe it's four noon games on Sunday, which is crazy.
Whoa,
The disrespect. I'm
man.
telling you, man.
Guess maybe they agree with the quarterback rankings too.
Boo.
No, I
No,
was kidding.
no, no. If you missed
I'm
that
just
last week's episode, go to last week's episode. We got into it on the top quarterbacks in the NFL. There was a ranking, and it put Patrick Mahomes somehow at number four, which is ridiculous. Tubby was in agreement with that, though, and he had his argument. Okay, he had his reasoning. But today is all going to be about. We want to talk about maybe who are the most improved, maybe the top five most improved teams so far this offseason.
Mhm.
Tubby, who do you got?
I think the number one team, I think it's pretty clear. It's the Chicago Bears.
Hmm.
They saw what they needed to do, and they have a young quarterback. Offensive line was terrible. You go out and get, all pro Joe Tooney. You bring in Jonah Jackson. You get Drew Dahlman, who is the best center on the market, and you've built the offensive line. But I think the one piece that everyone has missed is the biggest acquisition for them was Ben Johnson. You got you a head. We don't know if he's a head coach. I shouldn't say that, but he can't be any worse than what Matt Eberflus has been over the last few years.
Correct. Yeah. He has a great offensive mind for a team that has a ton of weapons. So I think I would
Yeah,
agree. Who would be the runner up?
I think the New England Patriots. Again,
Also agree.
these a lot of these teams are going to be at the bottom because the top teams. It's going to be a lot tougher for them to build because they're already that good. So you look at what the Patriots did, and they were able to once again build around the young quarterback, and that's a big deal. Drake May led the NFL in rushing yards per attempt in rushing because he
Which
was
is
having
crazy.
to scramble so
Yeah.
much last year, and now you get you an offensive lineman and Will Campbell. You brought in Morgan Moses. You brought in a couple other guards. You've started building that. You bring in Travion Henderson, who will help in the backfield. You get a couple wide receivers in the draft. I really liked what they did building around him, and they built onto the defense also.
Yeah. And outside of the Bills, I really think this is a division that could produce a wild card team, possibly
Hmm.
come playoff time. So who knows? Maybe that's one of those sneaky teams that you'll look at this year, especially even with schedule.
Yeah.
They towards the bottom, so they'll have a slightly easier schedule this year. So maybe who are your 3 through 5? Who you got?
I got the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals did a really good
Hmm.
job this year. The one thing I need to see them do is bring in another wide receiver opposite of Marvin Harrison, which at this point is going to be tough unless
Oh
there's
yeah.
someone out there, shopping a wide receiver. I've heard Chris Olave's name getting thrown out there quite a bit lately, and I mean, bringing Chris Olave and Marvin Harrison Jr. Man, you gave Kyler Murray three really good weapons, including Trey McBride and then James Conner and Benson, the young running back. But what I really liked is that they once again, they knew where their deficit was, which is the defensive side. You bring in Josh Sweat from free agency. You draft Walter Nolan. You draft Will Johnson in the second round, who should have been a first round pick, but fell because of the knee injury. Then you bring in a guy like Denzel Burke, who fell down the draft boards because he didn't have a great year. But if you get him in the right situation, get him coached up really well, we were looking at Denzel Burke, before the college football season as a first round to second round pick, and he fell into like the fifth round. So we know the talents there. You bring Cody Simon, another guy from Ohio State, to man the middle of the defense. I really like what they did on the defensive side of things, improving that defense. I think the Chiefs, and I know people are gonna think it's crazy, but their biggest hole, yeah, losing Joe Tooney is big. It's a massive loss, but your biggest hole was that left tackle, and I love the pick of
Yep.
Josh Simmons. And I think Jalen Royal is another one of those big steals in the draft who I had, late second, third round, went in the fifth round to the Chiefs, who was a big take, top off the defense. And, if Marquise Brown can stay healthy and Jalen Royal, Rasheed Rice comes back, we saw what Xavier Worthy was able to do at the end of the season. I really like what they did there. And I know people are going to laugh at this, but I like what the Giants did. I really love what they did
Really.
this offseason.
Even with the QB spot. You
The
love Dart, so that makes
the
sense.
the thing, yeah, I'm a big Jackson Dart fan, but the thing is you bring in Russell Wilson. You don't have to start Jackson Dart right off the bat if you
Sure.
don't want to. And you got Jameis Winston also, which I'm not saying is great, but
It's a good
if you
backup.
need to, yes. And you really address the defensive side of things, building up that defense. Now you potentially give Neighbors at least, we know Russell Wilson can move the ball. We saw the disaster at quarterback last year for the Giants. And if Jackson Dart is what I think he can be, especially with his accuracy deep down the field, Malik Neighbors could have a massive year if Jackson Dart is thrust into that starting position.
Yeah, Neighbors already had a good year last year, just didn't find the
Yeah,
end zone a whole lot, but that was with nobody throwing to him. So
yeah. I mean,
imagine.
look at yeah, and then he missed like 3 or 4 games
Mhm,
due to concussions, but you look at his target share last year, it was one of the highest a rookie's ever had in a season, and he still ended up over 1,000 yards and 90 catches. The guy is an absolute mismatch. You get him a quarterback that can get him the football, watch out. This dude's
yeah.
gonna be one of the top wide receivers in the NFL in a couple of years.
Yep, no doubt. All right, well, let's talk about this. I mean, a lot on the offensive side, some of the biggest improvements that you've seen across the board. But if you
Mhm.
look across at the defensive side, maybe who are some of those top teams on paper that you think you'd expect them to have some of the best or the strongest defensive units?
I think the number 1 defense in NFL right now is the Denver Broncos. And they got better this year. You bring in Drake Greenlaw, despite the injuries, if he can stay healthy, he's a really good middle linebacker. You bring in another guy from the 49ers, Hufanga, safety who, once again, if he can stay healthy, is a really good safety. Then you draft Jade Barron, which I'm not the biggest fan of Jade Barron, but you can play him in the slot if you need to, and you've got a really scary defense. They were one of the top teams in sacks last year, one of the best teams when it came to quarterback efficiency and rating. I
Hmm.
really like what they can do on the defensive side, and I think they just got even better.
Yeah. What about maybe a second, the other two more teams that you think
Uh,
whew,
I think the Houston Texans. I think
they're
the
going to need
Houston
it too?
Texans
Yeah.
defense, yeah, is sneaky good, and it gets overshadowed because maybe the record wasn't as good as everyone expected. And the offense was so bad last year with CJ, not due to CJ Stroud, but due to the
Injuries.
offensive line and all that. Yeah, the injuries. Nico was out for a while. Tank Dell was out. Mixon was in and out. So I think their defense is really sneaky, and it speaks to who their head coach is. D'Amico Ryan was an
Yeah.
incredible defensive coordinator for the
Yeah.
49ers.
Oh yeah. No, I
And
do
then
like that. Yeah, go ahead.
then the next one I think is difficult because I know a lot of people are going to say the Philadelphia Eagles, or people
Hmm.
are going to throw the Ravens up there. I have questions with the Eagles due to who's the pass rushers. Yeah, you bring in Aziz Ojolari, but he's really underperformed in his career. Same thing with Josh Uche. He really hasn't, shown a whole lot. He's a good, situational pass rusher. The Ravens, I think, have a great argument for number 3. I think they got better. You draft Malachi Starks. You bring in Mike Green off the edge, but I think the one team that is going to be super sneaky defense this year is going to be the Seattle Seahawks. Mike McDonald's
Okay.
second year in the system. You've got a great core, of young secondary players. Then you drafted Nicky Manawari in the second round. You bring in some edge rushers. I think this defense is going to be sneaky, which I think they're going to need it because I don't think their offense is going to be great because
Mhm.
I have questions with the weapons that Darnold's going to have to throw to, and is
Yeah.
Darnold going to replicate what he did last year? I don't think he is. So I think they're really going to need the defense, and I think a second year with Mike McDonald and the guys that they have and improving and the guys they drafted, I think that defense can be really sneaky and be one of the top defenses in the NFL.
Yeah. I think for me right now, they're in the honorable mention side of things. I still would put
Hmm.
Baltimore up there
Yeah.
on the defensive side. And then this is going to sound biased. Any game, give me Steve Spagnuolo and a defense and a mind that he has. It's going to put the
Hmm.
team in a position to win. And
Yeah.
the Chiefs have had a very good defense the last couple of years,
Hmm.
an elite defense when they won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Uh,
Yeah.
we didn't get a chance to really talk about this, but is this a good move? The Dallas Cowboys getting another receiver to go with CD Lamb. I mean, they needed so much help on the skill position side of things. Is this
Yeah.
actually helpful, or is this actually going to be two steps back?
I think it's a good move. I don't think they gave up too much, but it's going to come down to the locker room side of things. That's the biggest thing with George Pickens is not the on the field things. We know the talent that he has. It's the off the field, and then some of the stuff that he does on the field. The extracurriculars. Running a guy into out the back of the end zone, ripping his helmet off. Stuff like that. How does his character match up with that? And I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of George Pickens just because of the other stuff. Just I think he's an incredible ball player, but he's gotta have to really mature, and they definitely needed another wide receiver because
Yeah.
they had the largest, discrepancy from their top wide receiver to the number 2 wide receiver in the NFL last year. So, it was a big need, but how does he fit within that locker room? I don't know. There's some big voices, and then plus you got Jerry Jones there too. How does that all play out? I don't know.
Yeah, well, we're gonna follow it along the way, all season long, all off season long. So you know that they're gonna be in the off season news at some point. George Pickens is gonna
Oh
say
yeah.
something where CeeDee Lamb and him are gonna be seen, practicing or whatever, which will be a good thing. And we hope that it's
Hmm.
good for football and a good uh, place for him because CeeDee Lamb is he's a stud. Love the guy.
Yeah.
So hopefully it helps him have an even more explosive year. So we'd love to know your thoughts. If you haven't already, make sure you put those in the comment section because top teams, maybe your team didn't get mentioned and you think that they've made a lot of great moves, or maybe you go back to the very first question we had. What was the feature that you want to see the most in the new college football game as it comes out later this year? There's a lot of good things, a lot of good ideas, and maybe it's one that no one's thought of and that you just want to spread the word. Well, better place than the W Sports Podcast chat. I'm just saying. So
Yep.
we're going to be back again next week with more baseball. And you know what? It's Memorial Day is next week, or the week after that. Anyways, Memorial Day weekend begins next weekend, and that's when you start to look at the standings and what does this really mean. So we're getting to that intensive or legit part of baseball season. So make sure if you have not already that you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the W Sports Podcast episodes. Any final words, Tubby?
I couldn't set it better myself.
All right. Well, all right. Well, we appreciate you all. We'll see you all next time.
See ya.
See you.